In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a simple ball and socket joint using Fusion 360 for the goal of 3D printing. A ball and socket joint is a way to join two pieces together that lets them rotate and move freely. So it sort of has two pieces that come together in this format, and then the socket is able to move and pivot around the ball. So we'll start with a new sketch. And let's create a cylinder from the bottom plane. We'll make this cylinder about 5 centimeters, 5 millimeters. Hit enter, and let's extrude it upwards about 15 millimeters. So now let's create a sphere on top of the cylinder. Let's go to create, sphere. We'll select the top of the cylinder, and we'll make about a 10 millimeter sphere, should be enough. And we got to make sure we change its operation to new body. Hit OK. Let's look at it from the right side. Let's create a plane so we can cut the sphere in order to make it into the socket part of the ball and socket joint. So let's go to construct, offset plane. Let's create a plane from the bottom face, and then we're going to raise it up about a third of the way up the sphere. So something like that should be okay. Let's hit OK. Let's create a sketch from this new plane. We're going to create a rectangle. Doesn't matter the size of the rectangle. It should just be big enough to cover up the sphere, as you can see here, because we're going to take the sphere and then extrude it upwards to cut the top piece off. Okay, so we got the start of our socket. Now what we're going to do is start making the ball part of it. Let's select this shape. Let's hit M, and we're going to move this as a body. So change move object to bodies. Select this body, and we're going to create it as a copy. So we're not moving this object, we're moving another version of this object. So let's move it upwards. Let's hit OK. And now let's scale this, because this is going to be used as the shape for cutting the socket out, the inside of this. So we're going to select modify and scale. Let's select this, and we're going to scale it about 95.95. Let's hit OK. And we're going to move this down in order to cut, but before we do that, we want to make sure we cut both the cylinder and the sphere. So we need to join these two pieces together, which is body 2 and body 1. So let's select body 1, body 2, body 1, hold shift, and then modify, combine, and we're going to hit OK. All these options look good, so let's hit OK. Now let's rename this for the sake of clarity and call it socket. So later on we know which body we're working with. So we'll call it socket and hit enter. Let's look at it from the front view again. And now we're going to move this. Let's name it, double click to rename it, and we're going to call it ball. Enter. Let's move it down in order to cut. So hit M. And we're going to move it as a point to point in order to make sure it lines up correctly. So select point to point, the origin point. And first of all, the selection, the one selected should be the object that's moving. The origin point is going to be from the middle of this circle. The target point is going to be the middle of that. And you can see how it's placed. Let's hit OK. And perhaps I would want to maybe scale the other shape a little bit smaller, but we'll go with it for now. And we'll see what happens. So let's go to modify. Let's go to split body. We're going to use socket as the body to split, and the splitting tool is going to be the ball. Let's hit OK. And you can see a new object appears, because if you turn off socket and ball, you can see that now we have this new shape with the inside cut out. Alright, so let's work on the ball part of it. Let's make that visible. Let's select ball. Let's move it back upwards. Just going to use a free move. We're going to go straight up and away. Or better yet, well, let's keep this for now. Let's make let's make a cylinder off of the top of this, just so we can have something to hold it in and move the shape into. So let's create a sketch. We'll make a circle. About 5 millimeters, and we'll extrude it. Just an arbitrary number, 10 millimeters is good, just so we can see that this ball is going to go into the socket when we 3D print. It's going to be easier to manipulate, but when you're making your object, this is probably going to be whatever it's going to be connected to. But in order for this to go into a little bit easier, we're going to want to cut some grooves into the socket. So in order to do that, let's look at it from the right view. Let's create a rectangle. So I hit R for a rectangle, and we're going to make it off of the side plane. And we're going to make it maybe about 3 millimeters by 3 millimeters. So let's select 3. We'll try to center it a little bit better. Let's go to rectangle, and we'll select center rectangle. Gonna make it 3. Change this. We're gonna change the up and down dimension, so let's redo that. Probably start from the more towards the middle. We'll make it about 3, and we'll make it go about 1/4 of the way, but let's turn off the ball first so it doesn't cut into any of our other shapes. So perhaps something like this should be okay. Let's select the rectangle and hit E. We're going to extrude it from direction. We're going to select two-sided. We're going to extrude it both directions, and let's hit OK. And let's do the same thing for the other side. And now that I look at it, perhaps I want to go, instead of 3, perhaps maybe 2 would be better. So I'm going to undo it a couple steps and do this one more time. I'm going to make a center rectangle. Turn off the ball part of it. And we're going to make it about 2 instead of 3. So we'll type in 2, and we'll cut about this much. Should be good. And then let's go back to extruding it. So we'll extrude from 2 directions. And we'll hit OK. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Let's do the same thing from the other side. So we'll select Sketch, the side plane, create rectangle, center rectangle, select somewhere here. Let's make it 2 millimeters, and we'll go about the same height. I could be a little bit more accurate about it, but for demonstration purposes, this should be okay. Make a rectangle like this. Hit Escape, select the rectangle, and then extrude it from 2 directions, and then cut through. We'll hit OK, and so there's the completed socket. Let's turn on the ball, and let's kind of line it up to see what happens. We're going to move it down. You can see how it fits together. One thing I might want to think about is scaling the ball part of it. so there's a little bit of clearance between the ball and the socket to help it connect more easily. So let's hit cancel, and we're just gonna scale this part. Let's go about 0.96, a certain minimal amount, but you'll see if you move it, it's going to give you a little bit of clearance in order to not put too much pressure on the sidewalls. So there you have it. There's the ball and socket joints, and then I would send it to the 3D printer, test it out, and make improvements from there.